I drive past a 4-story brick apartment building on Morrison Avenue every morning on my way to work. The building has been there for at least 60 years. There is a small vestibule between the outer glass door and the inner locked door. The brass buzzer panel is mounted on the left wall of the vestibule. Last Tuesday I walked past the vestibule on foot instead of driving by, and I glanced through the outer door. The label for Unit 4B was my full name. First name. Middle initial. Last name. Printed neatly in black ink on a fresh white insert behind a clear plastic cover. My current employer's name was printed in smaller type beneath it. I have never lived in that building. I have never set foot inside it. Morrison Avenue runs east to west across the older half of the city. It is a 4-lane street with parallel parking on both sides and a row of small shops along the south curb. The apartment building sits between a dry cleaner and a coffee shop on the 400 block. The facade is dark red brick with white painted trim around the windows. Each floor has 6 units. The roofline is flat with a low parapet. There is a fire escape on the east wall. I take Morrison Avenue to my office every workday. I have driven this exact route for 8 years. The building is the third structure I pass after the on-ramp from the highway. I have looked at the front of that building almost every weekday morning for those 8 years. On Tuesdays I stop at the coffee shop 2 doors down from the apartment building. It is the only morning of the week that I leave the house early enough to park and walk in. The other 4 mornings I take the drive-through coffee chain near my office. The Tuesday routine started about a year ago when my wife began taking the car on Tuesdays for her own commute. On those mornings I take the bus and walk the last 6 blocks of Morrison Avenue. That is why I noticed the buzzer panel that day. I had walked past the vestibule on the sidewalk instead of driving by it at 35 miles per hour. The outer door of the vestibule was propped open with a folded piece of cardboard. I could see the panel clearly. I walked past the vestibule first. Then I stopped on the sidewalk and walked back. I stepped inside the outer door. The buzzer panel was at eye level on the left wall. There were 24 buttons arranged in a grid. 4 floors of 6 units each. I scanned the labels. The label for 4B was my full name in clean black printing. The line beneath read my employer's full legal name in a smaller font. The label was new. The white paper insert was clean. The plastic cover over it had no dust. I took a photograph of the panel with my phone. The flash bounced off the brass. Then I pressed the small black button for 4B. I held it down for 3 seconds. The buzzer did not sound. No one answered. I told myself the obvious thing. There must be a tenant with my exact name. My first name is common. My last name is common. There are hundreds of people in this country with the combination. The middle initial narrows it but does not eliminate. I have received misdirected mail my whole life. Old credit card offers for a man with my name in another state. A jury summons for someone in a different county. 2 collection calls for someone with my exact name and a different birthday. The coincidence at the buzzer panel was unusual but not impossible. The employer line on the label bothered me more. The company I work for is small. There are fewer than 90 employees. I told myself the company line could still be a coincidence. I drove to work. That evening I searched the city property portal for the Morrison Avenue address. In this state, Lease filings for buildings above a certain unit count are public record. The portal returned a scanned lease for Unit 4B. The tenant name was mine. The signature on the signature line was mine. The forward slant was mine. The loop on the L was the same loop I have been making since high school. The lease was dated 3 years ago this November. The monthly rent was $1,100. The mailing address for the tenant was a post office box in a town I have never lived in. I do not own a post office box. The emergency contact line listed a phone number with my area code and 4 digits that matched the last 4 of my old work line. The next morning I called the management company listed at the bottom of the lease. I told the woman who answered that I was calling about Unit 4B at the Morrison Avenue building. I gave my name. There was a pause. She told me the tenant in 4B had been paying on time for 34 months. The rent came in by auto pay on the first of each month from an account at my own bank. The account number she read me was not any account I owned. The last in-person lease renewal had been signed 2 months ago at their office. She remembered the appointment. She said the tenant had come in alone, had been polite, had worn a gray jacket. She offered to transfer me to her supervisor. I hung up before the transfer. On Saturday I drove to the Morrison Avenue building. I parked across the street. I walked into the vestibule. The label for 4B was unchanged. I pressed the buzzer for 4B 3 separate times across 10 minutes. No one answered. A delivery driver let me through the inner door when his arms were full of boxes. I rode the elevator to the 4th floor. Unit 4B was at the end of the hall on the left. The door was a plain wooden door with a peephole. I did not knock. I rode the elevator back down. An elderly woman got on at the 2nd floor with a small dog. She looked at me and smiled. She said she remembered me from the elevator earlier in the week. She said I had said good morning to her yesterday. The building manager came up after I showed him my driver's license downstairs. He matched the name on the license to the name on the lease and let me into Unit 4B with the master key. He stayed in the doorway. The apartment was furnished. The couch in the living room was the same brand and color as the one in my own living room. The bookshelf along the wall was arranged the same way I arrange mine. The same books in the same order. On the refrigerator door was a printed grocery list in my handwriting, organized the way I organize the grocery list I write every Sunday. On the desk in the corner was a framed wedding photograph of me and my wife. The date printed in the lower corner was 1 full year before our wedding. I left the apartment without touching anything. I told the manager I would be in contact. I drove home and did not tell my wife. I did not call the police. The next morning I drove past the building on my way to work. I slowed down at the 400 block. From the road I could not read the buzzer panel. On Tuesday I walked past the vestibule again. The label for 4B had been updated. My full name was still on the top line in the same neat black printing. The employer line beneath it had changed. The new line read the legal name of the company I had accepted an offer from the previous Friday. I had not yet given notice at my current job. I had not told my wife. I had not told anyone.